controlling, which we were doing in 22.
Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app. News that matters to you. NDTV proudly upholds its legacy of trust and credibility, according to the prestigious Reuters Institute.
You are watching The World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bava. Let's begin with the top stories you need to know. Prime Minister Modi lands in Brazil during the second leg of his three-nation tour. Our Prime Minister will attend the 19th G20 Leaders Summit in Brazil, which starts today. Bangladesh's interim leader Muhammad Yunus has appealed for the nation's patience, pledging that general elections would be held after electoral and institutional reforms were completed in a televised address marking 100 days in office. Russia unleashed its largest wave of airstrikes on Ukraine in almost 3 months, firing 120 missiles and 90 drones in a sweeping attack that killed at least 7 people and caused severe damage to the power system in Kyiv. At likely their last face-to-face meeting, US President Joe Biden and China Xi Jinping sounded caution over deteriorating relations as Washington transitions to a new Trump administration. On the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in Peru, Biden stressed the need for open communication with Beijing. India is ready to launch from USA its most sophisticated communication satellite, named GSAT-M2, using SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. The satellite, when operational, will provide data or internet services to remote areas and will enable availability of internet in airplanes. Tata is set to take a majority stake in an Apple iPhone manufacturing facility in Tamil Nadu, Reuters is reporting. The purchase means Tata will be in competition with Taiwan's Foxconn as one of Apple's largest contract suppliers. Scientists have created a new artificial intelligence model that can decode and design entire genomic sequences. In fact, trained on a data set of 2.7 million microbial genomes, EVO can predict, generate and engineer the blueprints for biology at a large scale and accuracy older models were incapable of, the researchers argue. Well, our big focus, Prime Minister Modi is geared up for a high-stakes diplomatic mission as he landed in Brazil for the 19th G20 Summit that starts today in Rio. The summit promises to be a pivotal moment on the global stage, but before that, the Prime Minister was in Nigeria, where key talks and crucial agreements in sectors like defense and energy were on the table. Now that he's off to Brazil and landed there, the Prime Minister will meet fellow leaders and continue building on India's growing influence. This year, Brazil is carrying forward India's legacy, is what our Prime Minister has said, as he prepared for intense bilateral meetings. Also, this summit marks one of the final international engagements of the US President Joe Biden's tenure before Trump's new administration takes over in January. The G20 summit is expected to draw other international leaders, though I must mention that Russian President Vladimir Putin, who had skipped last year's summit in New Delhi, is unlikely to reach Rio this year as well. My colleague Mohammad Ghazali has been tracking the Prime Minister's visit very closely. He joins us live at the moment. Ghazali, take us through Prime Minister Modi's G20 agenda.
See, it will be very important to see what kind of statements will be issued in G20 summit in Brazil, because whatever declarations were issued last year when it was hosted by India, It will be reviewed upon, and India also being a Troika member alongside Brazil and South Africa in the BRICS is a very important member of the BRICS. And more than that, what will be more interesting to see is that what will be India's stand when it comes to the global conflict, be it Russia, Ukraine, be it the turmoil in the West Asia. And alongside, there are many agenda when it comes to global issues and global challenges of energy sector and green energy, hydrogen energy. These are certain issues on which Prime Minister will be addressing there. And also, Prime Minister has reached there from Nigeria. So we saw that what kind of engagement he had there, the outreach in the African region, the West African region. G20 will be very important because last year it was India which hosted it, and has now given the chair to Brazil. So a lot of other engagements, bilateral talks are expected in the G20 summit.
As always, Ghazali, thanks so much for joining us with that update. Alongside our Prime Minister, Chinese President Xi Jinping and his US counterpart Joe Biden will also be among the leaders that are attending the summit in Rio, which starts today. With that, let's turn our attention now to the neighborhood. Well, Bangladesh's interim leader Muhammad Yunus has appealed for the nation's patience, pledging that general elections would be held after electoral and institutional reforms were completed. This was in a televised address marking 100 days in office. The 84-year-old leader has vowed that an election commission would be formed within a few days, but did not provide a specific timeline for elections, citing the need for significant electoral as well as constitutional reforms. We have with us senior journalist from TRT World joining us in a few moments, but before that I must mention Mr. Yunus has been trying to come to a consensus with political parties in the neighborhood. He has said that polls will be announced after electoral and constitutional reforms. In fact, he has appealed to Bangladesh to be patient, pledging that the general elections would be held after these reforms were completed. The 84-year-old leader has vowed that an election commission would be formed just within a few days, but as far as a specific timelines for these elections is concerned, there was no specific timeline provided. But the Bangladesh leader has cited the need for significant constitutional reforms as far as the neighborhood is concerned. So polls are expected to be announced after some sort of consensus within political parties there. In fact, some experts argue that if the interim administration falters in making reforms that have been demanded by the Bangladesh political leader, the outcome is likely to be an early election with little progress. But in the worst case scenario, experts also not ruling out that the military could assume power. But in terms of the emerging consensus among political parties, we will of course get you an update from ground zero. But analysts argue that for now, Mr. Yunus and his colleagues have widespread support, but popular expectations, and as you know, are double-edged. So, taking a stock of the local situation, necessary steps will be taken to hold elections by the current interim dispensation there. In other crucial news, Tata is set to take a majority stake in an Apple iPhone manufacturing facility in Tamil Nadu, Reuters is reporting. The purchase means Tata will be in competition with Taiwan's Foxconn as one of Apple's largest contract suppliers. Now, as per reports, Tata Electronics is signing a deal to own a majority stake in Taiwanese contract manufacturer Pegatron's plant in Tamil Nadu, underlining its move to increase its capacity of assembling iPhones. The deal is likely to lead Tata Electronics having a 60% stake, with Pegatron holding the balance in the JV to run the iPhone production facility. In fact, industry executives said the Tata Group company could pay up to $150 to $200 million for the stake. Well, news and updates continue in a moment. Don't go anywhere. We're back in a moment.
It's a web of frauds, calls, luring emails, threatening messages. Cyber frauds have cast their net wide and everyone is at risk. We track the victims, their horror stories as they get conned online, extorted and robbed of their hard-earned money. How to identify a cyber fraud and how to stay cyber safe. What are your options? Fraud.con, NDTV initiative for cyber safety. Only on NDTV 24/7.
Hello and welcome to India Sense, where I speak with global opinion makers.
The United States has made a strategic decision over the last 20 years to move closer to India.
A $7 trillion economy seems a perfectly conceivable number.
If you want to be a national party, it's that you sort of accept the way the world is rather than want to endlessly hark back to how it was.
Modi is promoting the digitization of the economy, which is accelerating growth in the country.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news is here.
I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president.
Donald triumphs. What does Trump's win mean for America, for the world, for the wars, and for India-US relations? Non-stop coverage on NDTV. Top analysts and voices from the ground. Extensive coverage on NDTV.
तालियों के साथ हम स्वागत करेंगे आदरणीय मोदी जी का। छत्रपति शिवाजी महाराज की।
त्यांचा अजेंडा फक्त करप्शन फर्स्ट, आमचा अजेंडा आहे नेशन फर्स्ट.
घोषणा आणि जनतेचे पैसे लुटणं.
कट कमिशन आणि करप्शनला आमच्याकडे थारा नाही. त्यांचा परिवारवाद, आमचा महाराष्ट्रवाद.
महाराष्ट्रामध्ये 1,75,000 जागा रिक्त पण का भरत नाही? राज्याची जनतेच्या घमाच्या पैशाची तिजोरी लुटण्यासाठी हे सरकार आहे.
पूर्वीच्या सरकारच्या काळामध्ये निधी देताना त्यांना असं वाटायचं की त्यांच्याच खिशातले पैसे चालले. शेतकऱ्यांना मोफत वीज देण्याचं काम आपल्या सरकारने सुरू केलं.
I've been reporting on all issues, big and small, from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
India's IT capital is always buzz. It's literally a city that never sleeps. And I keep you ahead on all the Bengaluru buzz.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge.
Welcome back. In a major US foreign policy shift, President Joe Biden from the United States authorized Ukraine to use US-made long-range missiles to strike Russia. Officials say the decision was made to discourage North Korea from sending its soldiers to fight for Russia in the war. Both the White House and Kyiv's other Western allies have for months debated whether to allow the use of their long-range weapons in Russia after Moscow had repeatedly warned that it would draw the US and NATO into war with Russia. The developments could complicate Donald Trump's promise of quickly ending the war when he comes into office, the continuation of which Kyiv and its allies increasingly seem to acknowledge amounts to Ukraine's slow death. Some foreign policy experts have also argued this. Here's what Ukraine's president had to say.
План посилення України – це план перемоги, який я представив партнерам. Одним з головних пунктів є далекобійність для нашої армії. Сьогодні багато в медіа говорять про те, що ми отримали дозвіл на відповідні дії. Але удари завдають не словами. Такі речі не анонсують. Ракети самі за себе скажуть. Обов'язково. Слава Україні!
Meanwhile, Russia unleashed its largest wave of airstrikes on Ukraine in almost 3 months, firing 120 missiles and 90 drones in a sweeping attack that killed at least 7 people and caused severe damage to the power system in Kyiv. Ukrainians have been bracing for weeks for an attack on the hobbled energy system, fearing crippling damage that would cause long blackouts as winter sets in and ramp up psychological pressure at a critical moment in the war launched by Russia back in 2022. The strikes, which prompted emergency power cuts in numerous regions, came after this month's US presidential election victory of Donald Trump, whose pledge to end the war without saying how has raised the prospect of a looming push to hold negotiations. Listen in to what Mr. Zelensky had to say, followed by NDTV's Uma Shankar's ground report.
Сьогодні був один з найбільших та найбільш небезпечних за всю війну російських ударів. 210 дронів і ракет одразу, в тому числі гіперзвукова та аеробалістичні. Більшість цілей, на щастя, вдалося збити. Мішенню для Росії була саме енергетика, критична інфраструктура. І це відповідь усім, хто хотів чогось досягти з Путіним розмовами, телефонними дзвінками, обіймами, умиротворенням.
Right now, I'm in train to Kyiv. Although Russia's attacks on Ukraine have been going on for 1,000 days, the one carried out on Saturday night and Sunday morning is considered to be one of the biggest attacks in months. Drone attacks were going on since Saturday night and lasted for about 10 hours. On Sunday morning, a big missile attack was carried out, which lasted for about 2 hours, hitting energy infrastructure across the country, killing at least 5 people and causing severe damages to energy infrastructure. There is no news of damage due to the strong air defense system in the capital Kyiv. However, a drone fell on a 5-story building in area adjoining to Kyiv, causing heavy damage to the building. 30 people were evacuated safely. According to the information given by Ukraine, Russia used many types of missiles along with the drones in this attack. Air-to-ground cruise missiles were also fired from Russian fighter planes and sea-to-ground missiles as well. These missiles were fired from Russian warship from the Black Sea. It is being told that Shahid and Shahid missile which Russia obtained from Iran and North Korean missiles acquired from the North Korea have been also used in this attack. All the major cities including the capital Kyiv, Chernihiv, Odessa, Zaporizhia, Mykolaiv and Dnipro were targeted. Areas of Ukraine bordering Hungary and Poland were also in the range of this attack, and therefore Poland also turned on its air defense system and made fighter planes ready, scrambled so that if any missile or drone accidentally comes to its area, it can be shot down. However, this did not come to a pass. In the attack late Saturday night and Sunday morning, mainly Ukraine's energy sector were targeted. This country wants, the Russia wants to cripple Ukraine's energy sector by continuously targeting it. The way the cold season has started once again, the destruction of energy infrastructure will bring more problem to Ukraine. Ukraine has lost about 65% of its production capacity in the earlier attacks. In such a situation, there is a huge shortage of electricity, gas, etc. to keep people's homes warm in this severe cold. This shortage may increase further, and thus this attack came it caused very heavy price to the Ukrainian people.
By the way, North Korea may deploy as many as 1 lakh troops to aid Russia's war on Ukraine if the alliance between Pyongyang and Moscow continues to deepen. This is as per many reports. The analysis is one of the several on the evolving partnership between Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un, and many talk about their private discussions, which we know little about. In fact, people familiar with the matter have stressed that such a move wasn't imminent and that military support at that scale, if it occurred, would likely happen in batches with troops rotating over time rather than in a single deployment. To the neighborhood now, while Bangladesh's interim leader Muhammad Yunus has appealed for the nation's patience, pledging that general elections would be held after electoral and institutional reforms were completed. He said this in a televised address marking 100 days in office. In fact, the 84-year-old leader has vowed that an election commission would be formed within a few days, but as far as the specific timeline is concerned, he did not provide any details, citing the need for significant electoral and constitutional reforms. For a quick update from Ground Zero, we have with us Mohammad Kamruzaman, senior journalist with TRT World. Thank you so much for joining us on NDTV. Some experts are arguing that if the interim administration falters in making reforms, the outcome is likely to be an early election with little progress, and in the worst case scenario, the military could also assume power. But take us through the state of affairs at the moment. Any consensus emerging among the political parties?
Thank you very much for having me. Actually, the people as well as the political parties all are interested for having a fair, participatory and inclusive election. That's why actually political parties as well as people are interested to wait until a very fruitful reformation. Actually, the experience of the people as well as the political parties not so good. During the last 3 elections in 2014, 2018 and 2024, that was actually marred by irregularities, ballot stuffing and other interference by the then government led by Sheikh Hasina. That's why people actually interested to see a fair election. And for that reason, actually, the country needs some reformation in election commission as well as civil administration and law enforcing agencies. And Dr. Yunus actually said that they also want a fair election after the important reforms. So there is, of course, consensus among the people as well as political parties for election. But that election must fair and participatory.
Well, the question of when the next election will be held in the neighborhood in Bangladesh is on everyone's mind. But analysts have also argued that for now, Mr. Yunus and his colleagues do have widespread support. No one is disputing that. But as we know, popular expectations are also double-edged, right?
Yes, thank you. Actually, election, people are interested because based on the experiences, they want to exercise their voting right. And that's why, of course, this government is not for a long time. But you know that already Dr. Yunus has indicated in a talk show by an international television channel that maybe 4 years, but not more than 4 years, yes. It may be a logical time, but they're interested to hold the election early. But it may take 4 years even to complete the reformation and other necessary amendment in the important departments of the government. So we also expect that the election it will not be held even less than 2 years. This is my prediction.
Right.
Maybe this interim government, which they are claiming that as a result of a mass uprising, they have come to power, so that they need to fulfill the expectation of the people, and the necessary reformation people also want. So they will ensure that reformation first, then they will hold the election.
Right.
This is the claim of the government. However, from the political parties, especially the main opposition political party under the Sheikh Hasina regime, that means Bangladesh Nationalist Party, BNP, they also want election as
Well, we'll be keeping a close eye on all the political developments in the neighborhood in Bangladesh. But thank you so much, Mohammad Kamruzaman, for joining us on NDTV.
You're most welcome.
And finally, Victoria Thielvig of Denmark has been crowned Miss Universe 2024, becoming the first Dane to ever win the competition. The 21-year-old, a competitive dancer, an entrepreneur, an aspiring lawyer, beat more than 120 other contestants to win this annual beauty pageant in Mexico City. Thank you for investing your time and watching this edition of The World 24/7. As always, we'll keep tracking the latest for you. Do stay tuned.
I now request the Honorable Prime Minister to launch NDTV World and address the summit.
It was the grand launch of NDTV World by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. NDTV World, as he laid out his vision for the India century at the NDTV World Summit.
ऐसी सदी जिसमें भारत के प्रयासों से दुनिया में स्थिरता आए,
In the presence of those who are shaping our future.
मेरी तरफ से आपको ढेर सारी शुभकामनाएं हैं।
NDTV World, your new home for global news is here.
NDTV proudly presents NDTV World Summit 2024, the India Century. I now request the Honorable Prime Minister to launch NDTV World and address the summit.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi's inaugural session at the NDTV Summit outlined his vision for the India century, driven by aspirational India.
हमारा प्रयास होगा भारत की सेंचुरी सिर्फ भारत की नहीं बल्कि पूरी मानवता की जीत की सेंचुरी बने।
The summit brought together prominent global leaders, highlighting India's pivotal role on the world stage.
Not just Indians trusting India's leadership, but the global South especially trusting India's leadership.
Permanent seat on the UN Security Council is something that should be India's right.
Canada is concerned, I think there are some very specific issues. I think a lot of people know that.
AI is going to be one of the most important, drivers.
It's a very exciting time for India, Indian cinema as well at a global level.
NDTV World Summit was more than just a conversation. It was a confluence of ideas poised to shape our global future.
We reached an agreement on petroling. We have gone back to where the situation was in 2020, and we can say with that the disengagement process with China, you can say, has been completed. The understanding, to my knowledge, is that we will be able to do the patrolling which we were doing in 2020.
Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app. News that matters to you. NDTV proudly upholds its legacy of trust and credibility, according to the prestigious Reuters Institute's Digital News Report 2024. NDTV is the top most news platform in the country. Number one in both online and offline reach in India. Beating all its competition, NDTV stands for trust. It's a web of frauds, calls, luring emails, threatening messages. Cyber frauds have cast their net wide and everyone is at risk. We track the victims, their horror stories as they get conned online, extorted and robbed of their hard-earned money. How to identify a cyber fraud and how to stay cyber safe. What are your options? Fraud.con, NDTV initiative for cyber safety. Only on NDTV 24/7.
Hello and welcome to India Sense, where I speak with global opinion makers.
The United States has made a strategic decision over the last 20 years to move closer to India.
So a $7 trillion economy seems a perfectly conceivable number.
If you want to be a national party, it's that you sort of accept the way the
A very good morning. You're watching NDTV 24/7. I'm Divya Vadva. We have a whole lot lined up for you, including GRAP4 that has been implemented. What all measures does this entail? We'll get you all the details. But first, let's get you the headline. With Delhi's air quality in the severe plus category for the first time this season, the centre's air quality panel has announced stricter pollution control measures as far as Delhi is concerned. Stage 4 of the Graded Response Action Plan has been kicked in, which will come into effect from now. That's 8 in the morning. Schools in Delhi will go online and there's a complete ban when it comes to construction. No entry for trucks in Delhi. The restriction also includes a temporary halt on construction at public projects. And as far as Manipur is concerned, the army now has been deployed and there's a curfew in Imphal. This after the Home Minister reviewed a meeting yesterday, a second one coming up in a matter of 24 hours. It's the last day of campaigning for Maharashtra and Jharkhand, with the polling that's scheduled for the 20th of November. Do remember this is the second phase as far as Jharkhand is concerned, and Maharashtra goes to polls in its single phase. Counting will take place on the 23rd. The Prime Minister is in Brazil for the G20 Summit. Top world leaders are part of that summit. And Russia unleashed its largest wave of airstrikes on Ukraine in almost 3 months, killing at least 7 people and caused severe damage to the power system. Kiev gets a US weapons wish in a major US foreign policy shift. President Joe Biden authorizes Ukraine to use US-made long-range missiles. To remember, there were 200 missiles and drones that were launched at Ukraine on Sunday. Let's get your top story, and that is Delhi's air quality, which has worsened even further. This is the first time when the severe plus category of the air quality has been recorded. Now, the centre's air quality panel on Sunday went ahead and announced stricter rules and measures in place in order to curb the pollution problem. We're talking about the Graded Response Action Plan, and now the Stage 4 has been implemented from 8 o'clock this morning, which basically means that all classes, as far as students are concerned, all these classes except for students of class 10 and 12, those classes are going to go online. There's a restriction that includes a ban on the entry of trucks and a temporary halt on construction activities, which also includes public projects. And according to the order, no trucks will be allowed into Delhi except for those carrying essential items for using clean fuel. Now, non-essential light commercial vehicles registered outside Delhi will also be prohibited except for the electric vehicles as well as the CNG and the BS6 diesel ones. It also recommends that offices in the NCR region work at 50% capacity, with the rest of the working staff that need to work from home. Those are the suggestions that are being made. This includes private offices as well as public and the government offices included in this measure. Now we have my colleagues Ishika Verma joining us from Akshardham. We also, in fact, let's just go across. Ishika, over to you first. And we also have Anushka joining us from outside the international airport here in the national capital. Let's just go across to Ishika first. Ishika, take us through the numbers and the data. Of course, visibly it looks even worse today. Driving to work was quite a hassle this morning. Visibility has become even worse, say what it was compared to last week. And when are these skies eventually going to clear up is the big question.
Well, Divya, you know, it is a situation of air emergency right now in the national capital, because currently if we talk about the graded response action plan, in fact stage 4 has now been imposed from today onwards, and in fact my camera person is trying to show you that we are currently reporting from Akshardham, but wherever you see that there is a thick layer of smog that continues to be present in the air, you won't be able to see anything much right now. We are trying to zoom in and in fact show you. But let me tell you that the air quality index that has been recorded this morning for national capital stands at 483. So you can clearly imagine the hazardous quality of the air currently that we are breathing in, and